Stash it in a hearse. Tales from the crypto. We in the metaverse now. We in the metaverse now. Oh, yeah, I got y'all coin wallets and ledgers and bots and thoughts and plots. That's how all this started. Be kind to a bitch, they be cold-hearted. Think you in control, then God get started. Think God ain't in you, dearly departed. Your ass gone, dog. You gone. Dearly departed.
I got 5 on pump 5 before I got here. Hard times mean it's time to get it from the muscle, hustle, ready. We started a revolution, and now it's time for the evolution. Gather all your family and tell them to meet you at grandma's house in that small town down them dirt roads where the Wi-Fi speeds
slow down,
chop and screw like the music we listen to. 227 Mary Jenkins spreading the news. Wisdom. What's up, y'all? We are back. The Bottom Up Podcast. Y'all know I'm Sarah, but the best poet in the business, and I'm right here with our special guest today, Phil Mays of Rocapoint Partners, who is the project developer for this 1.7 billion, 1.5, somewhere between there, $1 billion project in the new downtown Pompano Beach. I also asked my brother, Pastor George Rich, to join me in on this conversation. Listen, this is a special edition, but as you all know, before we start any show, we also start with our history. Because you got to know where you come from to know where you're going, and this history includes me speaking at a commission meeting. I'll see you in a minute. My advocacy for the arts and culture hasn't just been about the paintings on the walls or the theatrical plays or various ways artists provide entertainment. It's been about humanity and the direction we're going. Our ability as artists to unify is a hot commodity that many have profited from while perpetuating the mindset of starving artists. It's beyond time to do business with artists that promote love, civility, and unification in commerce, in policy, in equity, and in spirit. As we progress in this city through the rebuilding and redevelopment of communities, cleaning up slum and blight isn't just about the roads and buildings. It's also about the people that have endured a life of brokenness. We must, with finance and action, rebuild the spirit of the people while redeveloping the bridges in which we interact. That is the hope in which this project moves forward. My advocacy for the... All right, y'all, we here. And I want to make sure you all know that this is a very important conversation that we're having. So share it. And if you can't watch it live, make sure you go subscribe to the YouTube channel and check it out, because these are the type of conversations that we need to have, the important conversations, right? So I have 2 special guests here, and I want to make sure I give them an opportunity to speak to you all. But before I do that, I always have to let our guests know that the Bottom Up Podcast is centered around Black history, Black culture, Black economics, all things surrounding the Black experience. And part of that requires us to be able to build bridges, to build better communities. And that is why you are here, because you are here to build up this city in a way that elevates people. So I wanted to have that conversation with you and welcome you to this table. Y'all see, we don't set up the table. That's normally in the couch, right? But I set up the table because as we're talking about this project, the big question that people want to know is, how do they get to the table?
How do they get to the table?
How do they get to the table? So I had to bring the table out to let people know we want to make sure that people are welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. And then y'all know I got Pastor Rich here. So I'm going to start with you, Phil, if you want to say anything, talk to the people before we get into some questions and just some conversation.
Right. And I think maybe the best thing for me to do is start with some background, on me. Personally, I'm from Florida and went to school. I'm from Gainesville, went to school in Gainesville. Moved to Atlanta right out of college, and initially practiced in real estate law, and quickly went into development a few years after that. And so I've had a pretty long career in different types of development, and a lot of it in highly complex, larger scale development, such as what we're, talking about here. I think this particular, project is actually quite a bit different than other ones we've done, and they're all different in their own way based on location and circumstances of where they are. But this one's especially important due to the opportunity we have to make a positive impact, in the community here. And so I think that's a big piece of what we're, trying to affect moving forward.
Yeah. I want to say too that this isn't my first conversation with you. So you and I have had a few conversations, and I thought it about time to ask if you would join the podcast. And I want to thank you for accepting the invitation. But I also want to thank my brother, Pastor George Rich.
Appreciate you, sis.
I had to get you here because remember when you called me to say, hey, come to this church because you weren't supposed to be there, but I think you should be there.
Yeah.
And I think so much about that speaks to who you are in building bridges and actual community change. So I thought this was a very good opportunity to have you at this conversation because you can bring insight.
Thank you.
Ask questions that I may not be able
Thank you.
to ask because I'm an artist. I'm a creative. Y'all, I stay in that lane.
Sure, but you are not just an artist. You are a leader. You are a voice, and I thank you for building this bridge. Not just for me to be introduced to an audience that I probably on normal cases would not even be speaking to or hearing from, but then also Phil, bringing the developer that's coming into a historical, predominantly Black community and who is about to embark upon a development that's going to likely change the face and the character of what we know as Northwest Pompano today.
Yeah, very important, and I think this is good. I also got a special guest over there, DJ. I thank you for coming.
What's up, DJ?
Checking it out, because that's the future. You know, he's in school for being a general contractor. I thought that was just so important to highlight. 19 years old, and he's showing up to commission meetings and involved, and we need that.
Yes.
When we're talking about what we're building, making sure we have some future leaders part of that conversation and at the table. So let's jump into it, Bill. About what we about at 70 acres of a development, and partly of that is like a good 80% of it is in the Northwest District.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not all connected and contiguous. So there's still other pieces. Yeah. There's a large piece owned by the county, ironically, and then there's some other private pieces. But the CRA and city, does own a good amount of acreage here. Yeah. And so that's what we were tasked to look at about a year ago when we started, on this journey. And so I can tell you that as a larger scale developer, we get asked to look at a lot of projects with cities, counties, governmental entities, and we honestly pass on most of them. This was interesting to us due to being Broward County, and it's a high-profile county. I happen to be from Florida and have a lot of connection. I've worked in South Florida 3 times in my career, doing different things. So I knew the area, fairly well. And the fact that there had been redevelopment already in Pompano, occurring over at the beach, and then somewhat over at the the casino area, and knowing that this was kind of the middle part that had really probably need to be most addressed, but had not been dealt with or had a real comprehensive plan until this point. So it was a real interesting opportunity to come in and do something that is really important to the area.
I want to say that when the ITN went out and it got down to the final 2, I was at that meeting where you all were selected, and there was a vast difference between the 2 plans that was presented. And what stood out, I'll tell you what stood out to me in the first presentation was the fact that one started out talking about art and culture, and that's I want to say their name wrong.
The other group.
Related, urban related, urban related. They started out with culture, with art, and so much about what I do in my conversation is making sure the conversation surrounding culture and art is done in an equitable way. And a lot of times, have seen and researched how artists have this mindset of starving, like a starving artist mindset. Like we're so
struggle
committed to
mode.
our art that the business of what we're doing is being, for lack of a better word, pimped. And then by the time we realize the value of our art and culture, someone owns it, and we're not benefiting from that. And I thought that was good that they started with it, but there was missing pieces that made the intersection of culture and art be realistic. Okay, how do we be a part of it? Other than you showing paintings of a building that's going to appreciate over time, but that artist gets paid one time, and there's nothing else left for them. I speak to that because here in Pompano, I don't own land. I don't own a building. I don't own a house. So I don't speak to those things that I don't own. But I do have real estate in the art and culture of the Northwest District here in Pompano. From building, trailblazing, and then also enriching it with what's already here. I want to talk to you about where do you see the culture that already exists here in the Northwest District, preserving it, investing in it, and building up the creative community here to be a part of what you have going on.
Right. And I think, and we have talked about this, you and I, and in other venues about this a few times already. And it's important to know too, at this point, that we don't have a contract, with the city. So we're still, we're not engaged formally to really do anything. So a lot of it is, what we think is the best, way to go forward. But we're not contracted to, from the city or CRA or anyone to do any of it yet. But, I certainly have, let the city and the county folks know, and state, your state representatives know what I and our, company, which is based out of Atlanta, feel or, needs to occur, here to make this development successful, this new downtown Pompano Beach. And, number one, it has to be a place, for everyone. It has to be it's a situation where if it doesn't work for everyone, it won't work for anyone.
Right.
And that is just the facts. And it's important that as we look at what streetscapes look like, and that can mean buildings and how things are positioned in hardscape and landscape and art, kind of all of it together. It's what you're experiencing when you're walking down the street, where people are walking there and they go, oh, this is a place for me. This is a place where I feel comfortable and fit in. And that's always involving what is the local, culture, art. How does it feel and look walking down the streets? And then so for us to make sure that, everyone is feeling as they're walking down the street, oh, this is a place for me. I can see myself, hanging out here and going to whatever shops or whatever restaurants, whatever is going on there. But, part of that is figuring out, how does that look from an art perspective, and telling the history is an important piece of it.
Absolutely.
And, it's interesting because we've had discussion on, just from various, venues and back and forth over history. And then there's, some of the governmental discussion. And as a private developer, I can tell you that people love to know the history of an area they're going to, that's actually a great value to that area. People, if they want to go to Disney World, they're going to go to Disney World, which is all made up. But if they're coming to a place in a city with a lot of history, they would really like to see it. Right. And so that's part of the storytelling and makes it actually very interesting and successful, but I think also helps tie back to the community and the history that occurs there. And there's a number of ways, you being in the art community, there's a number of ways you can tell this history now. It's not just like in Atlanta, we have plaques that are all over the place. There's a lot of history there, and it's just plaques everywhere. But after your 20th plaque, and you can walk by a bunch of them in Atlanta, it gets a little bit same thing. But now with digital, and there's all different kinds of things, and so I think that's something we'll be able to connect and figure out how to best and in interesting ways tell the story where people can sit and see it or listen to it or read it. But there's a lot of different, or feel it and touch it. But there's a lot of different ways to do that. And it's interesting to, just having done developments, it's interesting to everybody. People want to come to a place that is unique and has history. They're not looking for, if they want to go to a mall, which is very stale and just retail, they would do that. This is a different type of a project, and it'll be a different type of place. And it really should be enriched by the culture and the history that is here.
Right.
And that'll be an important piece, I think, of the puzzle.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of what the community is asking a question is not only what will this look like 5, 7, 10 years from now,
Right.
but how does that history not get lost? When you even think about this particular road, that at some point back
Right.
in history, that it was a lot of Black-owned businesses
Right.
that was along this corridor. Then there's a portion that's called Jones Quarters, which it has a lot of history there.
Right.
And so, yes, it won't look like it was then,
Right.
but how does that story continue to be told? And not, for lack of a better word, and I'm gonna use it, is that history is now whitewashed,
Right.
and Pompano no longer has that character that it once had.
Right.
I mean, can you speak to, I guess, how maybe in the past, how maybe your team has kind of addressed keeping history?
Right. And we talk a lot about, because I do think that the historical piece of it relates to the authenticity, right, of the area, and the authenticity is how successful you are.
Yes.
People in today's world, in today's consumering world,
Yeah.
want authentic experiences. So this is a real authentic experience.
Yes.
So for us, we want to do anything we can do to tell this story, so people, the success of it. Let's say that just the three of us are investors going wherever it is. What we would talk about if we were in Minnesota is, we'd be in some part of Minnesota. We're going, how can we tell this authentic story here? So that is a big piece of it, or we won't be successful. Because people can go to the mall, that big mall in Minneapolis, Mall of Americas. But how can we be authentic and original to the space that we are? And so it really plays into, I think there's people that think people think it's an opposite road. It's not, it's the same road of success.
Yeah.
And that's the approach that we definitely take. And I believe it's how you have success in today's larger scale developments. And so it's a lot of working with the community and figure out, okay, number one, what is the important history, like you're talking about, and then how do we tell it in an interesting, creative way for everybody?
Yeah.
Because people think that maybe only people here or there want to see that. No, people will come and go, oh, there's this cool spot in Pompano that has all this history and it has other stuff going on. Let's go check it out. And then the people who could walk here and the people who live in Pompano, they're driving, whatever, like, oh yeah, that's really well told. You can see what's happening, and people are interested in authenticity and realness, and so I think that'll be an important part of what's happening here.
Good.
So, and then I would say too, there's some benefit to being partners with governmental entities, because they'll generally help you and they want you to tell that story too. Whereas if I'm just going in and we're buying 40 acres somewhere, there's nobody. Right, it's just the developer.
Right.
But we do partner with governmental entities quite a bit too. So it's a different it's different in that case of scenario, because the government wants us to tell that story too, and we think that's part of the success. And the community wants us to tell it too, wherever we are. And so I do think it works pretty well, better than people think from the outside.
Does the private sector in development such as this? Does the private sector lead that story, or does the community lead that?
I think that as the private sector, I'm about to hit my mic, but I we come in for a reason, because our execution is really good. As far as, but we don't know the story. We may have really good ideas on how to tell it, meaning what to put out there, but we have to work with the community on figuring out to know what's important, and also what might be the best way, visually and so on, to tell it. So really, it's a lot of working with, where we are, and in this case, here.
The community.
Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to bring up the wheel of economic opportunity. So at first we were calling it the wheel of opportunity, and I got a call from staff with the city and said, hey, what do you think about if we change the name of the Wheel of Opportunity to the Wheel of Economic Opportunity?
Right.
And I thought that was a great idea, because That's what everybody want to know.
That's
Where the
what we
money
want
at?
to
Where the money at? How do we get to it? And more importantly, I want to make sure that people hear that there is a pathway and that there's an open door for you to be involved if you want to be involved. And I think, like we said, projects of this magnitude, especially when we talk about development in Black community, we have to be realistic in the way that we approach it. And I've been saying this on this podcast for some time now, that we hear the term gentrification and it sends fear and shockwaves through our community. But there's also accountability that we have to have, because gentrification is a two-sided coin. And I speak to that because there's a lot of things that is done from an outside perspective, but then there are things that are done from an inside perspective. And this wheel is something that I was thinking of about 5, going on 6 years now, just thinking of like, what does this community need? When I left and went to school and did what I wanted to do, Pompano was the same thing when I came back. The same vacant lots, a couple buildings done tore down or whatever.
You had changed, but it hadn't.
It hadn't changed.
Yes.
And someone who wanted opportunity, I said I never wanted to come back to my community if I didn't have something to bring. And, my creativity, my art, culture, that's what I brought. I think if we check the history books around here, I started the first poetry night here in Pompano Beach, and in a lot of other small towns. Shout out to small towns need poetry too. But with that, it's like saying, okay, these are the things that I wish I had when I left and came back, so I can participate in it. But just because I didn't have it, when we start building something like this, I started following what this development does, and there's a 50-year plan.
Yeah.
There's a 50-year plan that goes into something like this, and where we are right now in Pompano is we're in the last 10 years, decade or so of this project. So 40 years prior, there's been planning and deals and decisions that have been made prior to me getting involved and learning what I learned through experience and or research. So being right here, I am very adamant on making sure that as we build communities that, the Black community have real conversations about coming to the table in equitable ways that builds generational wealth, but also we got to take accountability of how we re-gentrify our community.
Yes.
There are some bad elements that are in our community that brings down our property value, that wreaks havoc on our quality of life.
Absolutely.
From our elders to our children. And that requires us to say, hey, we don't want this. We want something different. We want something better. And that brings me to the fact that, hey, look, we just recently had a town hall meeting with Sheriff Tony. And there are some things that came up, but I came up about the violence, gun violence in Pompano. And it's nothing new. I think it's in most communities like this where you have social issues and you have crimes of poverty and opportunity isn't there. So what I want to know is, how does a project like this start to bring hope and opportunity to the younger generation? I have a Teen Entrepreneur Expo I'm going to later this evening, and these kids need to see something different. My kids need to see something different. So, and that's why it was so important for me to get him here.
Say this young guy.
So important for me to get him here, and him going to school to GC is because these bridges have to be built so people can see. Not only you feel, you got a little tan right now, but we need to see successful Black people building up our community.
Right.
So with your connections and what you're doing, I want to know, how do we make sure that Black investors come into this project and connect in a way not just black, because money is money.
Money is
you
money.
know, money is
Green.
money, right? Green.
Green is a universal
Green,
color.
it's
Yeah.
just a difference. But we need to see that represent. We need to see those black representations in every aspect of this project. That's been a question that a lot of people have been asking. How do we participate? Where is the black participation? Where is the commitment? Listen, you've already said that you don't have an agreement yet. We're in the courting phase, as they've been calling it with the city. But from a community standpoint, like, where do we fit in?
Right.
How do we participate from every level? I know where I want to go with art, and that's what the Wheel of Economic Opportunity is, very specific and interest based.
Yes.
So where do you see, the participation for this community, the Northwest community, and specifically the black community, to participate in a project of this magnitude?
And something you said first, as far as the investor part, the money part, 'cause we were on a public deal that we lost actually in Jacksonville, could have been 8 or 9 years ago now, and we were there, and our investor was a very, very well backed New York guy, and there at the Jacksonville. It was some kind of wasn't the city council board, it was a lower board. So well, we don't want and it was actually a great project that we'd proposed, but we don't want the money coming in from Rocapoint. The developer was Atlanta, but our investor was New York based. Well, we don't want that New York investment, which was the same thing we said. Like, why wouldn't you want the New York? By the way, New York's investing. There's everywhere, and they said no, because there was some local person in Jacksonville. So they took the Jacksonville person, and the deal never got off the ground. And in fact, those folks went bankrupt and never did anything.
Wow.
And so the money will come from where kind of it comes. Some of it's government related, some will be private investment. So the real question is, the opportunity for the young people, and people in the community. And I think for young people, it's important on probably in any of our projects, but especially this one, to partner with local schools, and that's always a big piece of it. That way, they're entrepreneurial young people that are in the school, or if there's different things that we can show, because you have different levels of this. You have us as a developer, then you have general contractors that are building buildings, and then once the buildings are built, you have businesses. Right, that are inhabiting the buildings, or it could be office building or a hotel or whatever it is, restaurant. But at the different levels, how do you give opportunity, and internships and externships, and jobs and so on to young people in the community that are looking for that. And I think that's one of the things that we can do, and that we have done in other spots, is making sure we're in tune with programs and local schools that are interested and have groups that are interested, of kids in coming in. And then by itself, I like working with young people, and especially ones that are motivated. And so I think that's kind of one piece of it. And then obviously assisting, on the really the end product is what jobs are available from these different businesses and things that happen. But assisting in that spot. And then I think there's also, getting back to the authenticity, and the history of the area, there needs to be an opportunity for smaller businesses to come in and have spots, because that actually will be very interesting. You want to make sure that they're whoever it is has some business experience, because you don't want them to put them in a spot and they have no chance to really make it. So you want people who've already had some success. But I think there's some real interest in, and we've seen other projects do this, where you're able to get some smaller spaces for people to kind of figure out their business. And again, that works both ways, because it gives opportunity within the community, or maybe some restaurants or shops that would have trouble on what I would call a market rate, or just a normal rate coming in. But it gives them a chance to build up. But then also for the people that are coming in, it becomes really interesting to go to the smaller places. People can go to the bigger places and the chains anywhere. But I think in a way it does all work together. But I think those are a couple of ways, that we're able to step in and assist. And then there's a lot of, when you get into everyone always wants to talk about construction, although that's really only a piece of something like this. Because you were talking about like the 4 decades before, and we're in the last 10 years of a 50-year plan. I look 50 years out too. Where are we 50? And part of what you're saying is, where are we 50 years out for the opportunity? And that you've really got to. It's important that we're going on that type of road. And how do the young people, like this young man here, get to see what he wants to see, as far as development or construction and so on, and how can we facilitate that? And then once you get to know people in the business, it's a lot easier. People are working with people they've worked with, and it's easier once you're bringing people in. But I think there's some good programs and some things that we can do, with schools and otherwise to bring folks in, and then the general contractors and so on. There's city and county programs, and so a lot of times we're not a general contractor, we're the developer. So there'll be different general contractors that do different pieces of it. But there are some very good and successful programs out there in South Florida. A lot of it's making sure they cast a wide net on the general contractor does, who could be a national or regional general contractor. You got a bunch of national and regionals here. This is a big area.
Right.
But you need to make sure that they're casting a wide net for subs, so they're not just using the same ones they used for the last 15 years, right? Because they get comfortable. And so I think there's some good programs out there, and we would definitely want to facilitate. And because we do work with other governments, so it's not the first time we've done that. In Greenville, South Carolina, which is the most recent one, we definitely worked through, or we had our general contractors work through their programs. And to make sure that general contractor's not just hiring whoever it was that they normally hired, but once they know that that's where some positive part of the government being involved in it, because they're like, they'll be an advocate for that, as long as we are too. I think, they do look for us, to private sector as a lead, or we wouldn't be in here.
Right.
Because I think in general, we're experts at carrying out something like this. And that's why they had the little, bake off on who was they were gonna work with. They're trying to figure out who.
A bake off.
That's a good way to call it.
Who's gonna, who
got the cookies?
Right.
Who got the cookies?
Who can do it best for the long term, and who do we want? Who do we, meaning the city, CRA, and community want to work with?
Right.
County to some extent too, although they weren't involved in it, will be an important piece of the puzzle here, as will the state reps. But my experience has been that if the city and the county are together, that the state people come along. Usually, and if the city's together, the county people generally will get on board. So I think I think it's going to be a major effort here of everyone to affect the best and most positive development and change that can occur here.
You recently attended a community meeting put on by the District 4 Commissioner Beverly Perkins. Great meeting. I think you held your own. And
I did not make that meeting, but was it, when you say that he held his own, did he get a lot of hard questions?
I think, he got the typical questions.
Okay.
The typical questions. And the people who were in the room are the people who are always in the room. And, so much about what happens in our community on a massive level is reactionary.
Yes,
there are very few people who consistently attend the meetings, who stay connected, who make sure that our voices are heard in these spaces. So the people who were at that, they were there, and they asked their questions, and they were all valid questions. And when I say Phil held his own, I think he was answering the questions towards the end, but I think people were just rapid fire, giving you questions.
Because normally I can answer. I'm not saying I have the right answer to every question, but I actually had thought I would be answering
the questions
as they were coming, but there were a lot of questions,
right?
And so the way it just went is there were a lot of questions asked.
Okay.
And at one point, I really had written down a lot of them, and a lot of them I've heard before. And so at one point I just started answering all of them. In my own kind of dialogue back, which I think was important though at that point, because it wasn't that we hadn't thought about it a lot already, and that a lot of it is well placed frustration of decades of issues, which I did totally expect, and I know, and I think that Commissioner Perkins was upfront about, hey, this this guy's come from Atlanta, he's not not living here for the last 40 years. But I recognize the frustrations, and it wasn't to be unexpected of the community, and it kind of goes back to there's a lot of investment in other parts, of the area, and now I think the investment's wanted here, but how do we make sure it's in a way that's productive, for the existing community? And I think those are really fair and valid questions. So I was happy to be there and happy to answer them, and I thought the meeting,
which is good,
went
very good, because even though it may be issues that are brought up that that predates you, but because you're dealing with that particular geography, you have to kind of juggle. Hey, this is what the community has experienced. This is what they're
Right.
saying. How can we use that to now inform what it is that we are going to build, how we are going to
Right.
build it, how we are going to incorporate them into it? And I think that's kind of feels like when we were talking about that will, right? Like I think that there is a cost that has to be paid, both by the community and by the developer coming in. And I'm gonna speak, we as the community cannot expect major opportunity without change.
Yes.
And that we have to accept that how this has been managed, done, or not developed hasn't really served us.
Yeah.
Vacant lots don't serve us.
No.
High crime, violence doesn't serve us. And if this is something that could help bring solutions to the table, then the cost of the community is to accept that change.
Yeah.
But then on the developer side, the cost of you also wanting this opportunity, it is to figure out how to meet us in the middle. And I think that a lot of our conversations that are healthy, it is not when we're fighting for our peace, but it is when we're trying to agree about the middle. And I think this is forums and platforms like this and that meeting, Phil, that demonstrates your willingness to meet in the middle. Let's have conversation and let's build from that.
Yeah. I think, something I said to you when I first talked with you is like, and we had this conversation too. I was like, I say, Phil, listen, I'm not a part of the black elites here. I'm a project kid. I just so happen to be smart and wanted to go see and explore the world, but love Pompano, love the culture, and that requires me to be also aware that, hey, I think this in every black community. We have the gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers.
And the toll booths.
And the toll booth.
That's my turn.
Now that's your turn.
I did that one. Okay. And for a while, those that infrastructure served us. It protected us. It kept things together. And I think now where we are in, the way technology is moving, the way, just the world is happening, we are behind in the Northwest District. And if we are behind, our children are behind. And, for me, that speaks to, the need for change, the need for the young people to be a part of the conversation of what we're building and what's there, because we're building it for 50 years from now. Listen, I'm 41. I don't know if you want to tell people how old you are.
42.
Bill,
43.
Okay. So, I mean, when I think that we're talking, if we're saying 50 years ahead as you're thinking, I have a 3-year-old son. He's more likely to experience the fullness of this than I will.
Absolutely.
But there has to be things set up that protect the assets that we have to build generational wealth, but then also the equitable opportunities to start building. Because like I say, I don't own a house here, I don't have land here, I don't have a building. So me staying here and committing to this, it has to be something that benefits me and my family to live a better life and keep the quality of life for people as in better places, because we constantly hear about our elders scared to walk out their doors and the things that's going on. So we need those changes. Phil, I want to say this too. You have built some other places. I think you spoke about Greenville. And I know that Greenville is a project similar?
Somewhat similar.
Similar
That we're working with the local government. Dissimilar in that their acreage is all together, contiguous. There's no missing pieces or whatever. It was all government property. Well, it was a bunch of government state and local government buildings. So they had control over them all. So this is a little bit different, and it's a little more fragmented here. But it's similar in that we the partnership is with the local government, which it will be, the same thing here. And so that kind of structure is similar. And then there's, and when you're working with government, there's all the community, issues that are there because the government is there to, theoretically, it needs to be there to serve the community. And so that is, the similarity here for sure.
Absolutely.
So my question is, how do you, now I spoke about the gatekeepers in the toll booths.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced the gatekeepers in toll booths in any of the other projects?
In any other project?
It's always there. It's like development's always also really closely related to politics. Because people have to approve the projects.
Yeah.
And on the government side, and then there's always some kind of form of gatekeeper. Toll booth, I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, I like that one.
That's mine.
But there's some form of that. Not necessarily how it is here, but there's always some form of that in most development areas. And so, but let me, I can answer more, but I don't want to answer a question you don't want me to answer.
No, well, how do you navigate it?
I think
there's a lot of trust that has to be built through these processes too.
Right. And I think, in the projects that we do, or at least over the last decade or so, are of such importance to the communities that we're in that it becomes larger than any one toll booth or gatekeeper, because we're the projects we're working on have a major impact on the community as a whole, and not any one or two individuals. And so it becomes more incumbent upon us to work with the community as a whole and the local government to make sure that in projects of this scale that it's accomplishing everything that needs to be accomplished for the different people. And that's not just about a few people, that's about a lot of people. Yeah, and then it's really what it is a lot of opportunity in the different circumstances, the different locations to really make a real positive impact. Like we do the PGA Tours headquarter campus. That's very different, but it's the opportunity for a lot of high-paying jobs and opportunities that weren't in that area in North Florida before. We're doing a big studios building. All of a sudden, you have like people on like the tech side, on the studio tech side, jobs that would have never been available there. And then you have a lot of side businesses that come to that. And so for them, for those folks, it was a different opportunity, but it was community wide and area wide. And so when you're working at that scale, and like when I came in here, I'm like, well, I go, this is a different. This isn't. We're gonna talk about building one or two buildings somewhere.
Right.
We're talking about a downtown area and rebuilding a community. And so that's not about a few people, that's about, a lot of people. And so I think that's one way to deal with it, right, is that we're dealing at a different scale.
Could you share what are the types of businesses or places that would be in this development so that those watching can fully grasp? We are talking about 70 or so acres, and the types of industries, businesses that they would see in this area.
Right, and I think you would look at certainly retail, meaning different types of small shops, restaurants, cafes, stuff like that. I mean, people like to walk and like to be able to grab whatever they like to eat, and from casual to mid-range, type of a casual like dining and so on. I think there's shops that would be surrounding that. We think there's probably a hotel piece. Generally, you have a hotel in a development of this type of scale, along with some office, and then obviously some house, some multifamily, mixed income. So that kind of all together, is part of the development and the community, and in this case,
entertainment at all.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's a lot in a retail, because people want experiential. They want authenticity and experience. And so, yes, I mean, a lot of what we see now in retail does involve entertainment.
Of course,
entertainment
the culture,
type uses.
the creatives, we're in there.
And you want that. And you also want people to come into a development like this and walk around and have like different interesting things to do. And that's part of the telling the history, but also could be poetry or music. We do a lot of that. And that's part of partnering with the things happening locally in the schools and so on, as well as just local artists. And it doesn't have to be anything. We see like some developments think you have to do it on a large scale. That's not really it. People are interested in small things.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Intimacy.
I mean, I can walk there downtown
Yeah.
Pompano, and there's these different things going on different times
Right.
of the week, and I may not know what it is, but I think it'll be interesting.
Yes.
Right.
Me and my wife a few weeks ago. We took a 2-week road trip. We knew 3 places that we was gonna go: New Orleans, Stone Mountain, and Orlando. Everything else in between, we just say, you know what? I'm tired of driving. Let's just stop and go here.
Right.
And what we always wanted to do was not go to a national brand restaurant.
Right.
Send me to the local
Totally.
place,
Oh,
to
Where the good eats at.
where the
Where the
local
good
people
eats.
go, and that's what we wanted to
Totally.
experience.
And Atlanta's all about that.
Yes.
People go out of the way not to go
Yes.
to anything national.
Mhm.
And so, and the authenticity again.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that, there'll be this opportunity, or we have it kind of on part of our conceptuals. We're like, hey, we think we should have these 4 or 5 smaller buildings here, and these things where we're able to get in, local flavor, for a better word, restaurants,
Yes.
because people want that.
Yeah.
They're not looking for, Applebee's.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's the real opportunity, and that gets opportunity for everyone, or the different, within the community too, because that's really what people, if we're telling the story, they're going to want to see it too and taste it, right, and buy it, and that's what, that's where you get in with the art and so on. And so I think it is, there's a lot to be done, but there's a lot of, a lot that can be done, and then looking forward, hopefully a far better place with far better opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, I think so much of what, the world is needing right now is something we can agree on. And I think we all somehow agree that things need to change. And this project is, it's in a city that has been divided for a long time. And, I speak, I spoke at a commission meeting about the arts being a unifier of people. Nothing brings people together like the arts. In sports, but even then they going against each other, But even when we talk about sports uses the arts to express what it is, I asked this question to Commissioner Perkins, and I'm going to ask you, do you think this is a project that could unify this city?
I think so. In a situation, and I think it has to be a project, for everyone. And I think that it's part of having a look and feel of, of where everyone feels that they could be there. And then I do think people look for authentic experiences, and this can and would offer that. And so I think that in that case, I think you could have people in the community here feeling comfortable, and other people in the city that don't live in this community going, oh, there's a lot of interesting things happening there. We can see all this history and walk around. There's different things to do, and I think that it has a real opportunity for that. And that was one of the things that drew us, to this project. We think there's a lot of opportunity here, and it's kind of it's the area that hasn't been, comprehensively or successfully addressed, over the decades. I think the city's kind of handled other areas, the beach, and then kind of what'll be more of a casino entertainment, more towards 95. But in the middle is where we are sitting now.
Yeah.
So
I think it's beyond time. It's beyond time for the city, the county to prioritize the Northwest District of Pompano. There's a lot of things historically that we can point out where we've been left out. We've been disproportionately affected by things. A big thing that keeps coming up when I'm talking with people is affordability. Is how are they going to be able to afford it? And I even asked myself that question, because let's be real. It's hard times right now. People are figuring it out, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul and mess around and got to turn right around and rob Paul. Paul probably ain't even got it now, But which brings me to the entrepreneurial spirit and the 7 streams of income and financial literacy. Something that our community is again behind on, you know, and historically we could talk about all the reasons why that happened, but we know the problem. Here is an opportunity and a table set to start bringing some solutions of how do you, no, go ahead. Need some water?
No.
Oh, okay. We're not going to promote that right now. But how do we have this opportunity here where now we are talking about affordability, entrepreneurial spirit is growing. Yes. People are having conversations about entrepreneurial experiences and income and streams of revenue. Financial literacy
absolutely
is so key to this project and this community, because a lot of what we're talking about, when we say $1.7 billion, I don't know, I ain't never touched.
Yeah.
I don't.
A lot of zeros.
Bank account ain't never, you know, so I thinking and visualizing, you know, what that is and how do you put yourself there to get your piece of it. Financial literacy is what we need, and how can this project and what you are doing is, along with the city, what can they do to educate,
right, capacity building,
and capacity build this community to be able to afford,
right. Because
I want us, and this is me aspirationally thinking, I want us as Black people to stop saying we can't afford, because I know if I want some chicken wings and that bank account is a little low, I'm still gonna go get them chicken wings. I can afford what I want to afford, right? But also too, being aware that there are some things that we don't know about financial literacy, and having those conversations and breaking down, like, first, how are we going to pay for this?
Right.
You know, how is this even affordable? Where does the 1.5 million? How did you get that number? Where did that number come from?
Right.
You know, in breaking it down.
It came out of New York.
Right.
Yeah, like breaking
That kind of money,
breaking it down in a way that people understand it, but also creating access. Access is huge. Like, how do you get access to the capital to build capacity?
Right.
How do you get the money to start up, you know, something and invest in the tech? How do you get that? And this project that you're bringing in, I think, and the city have a huge responsibility to do that. And I want to ask you, is that something your company and
and I think it, you know, as whenever you're throwing around a number like $1.5 billion or any kind of big numbers like that. So well, where that comes from is what the governmental entities look at it as what's the taxable value of an area today versus if you do all of these improvements, basically. What are the buildings and the structures and so on, all the tax revenue that would come from businesses. And so, you know, the value today is whatever it is, but if over time, you know, you build, kind of what we're talking about, this number of, you know, retail and restaurant, hotel, office, residential, what's it worth over time? All of a sudden their taxable values at 1.5 billion instead of maybe a couple $100 million or whatever it is today. And so those numbers are kind of come from that area, kind of taxable value of what would be there at the end of the day. And that and that just has come to the value and the quality of the area versus what it might exist as of today. But yeah, does it require about that much money to build everything? Maybe yes, maybe no, but they believe the value will be there, that type of value for all the structures, you know, or the businesses at the end of the day. And so that's kind of where that number comes from, because I agree, you got to break it down. No one's coming in going, here's $1.5 billion and why should you build all this stuff? It doesn't happen that way. It's in pieces. You know, a big piece of it is, you know, is the city willing to relocate its city hall here, you know, and make that as an anchor to quality new development. And then, you know, then are we talking about an event center attached to that becomes more community based? And then something you talked about earlier, I think it's really important, and I did listen to some of the meeting with the sheriff,
Mm-hmm.
is, I think as we're coming in, it'd be important to work with the communities to identify these or these things that are causing a lot of problems,
Right.
and to go together to the city and go, okay, we need to, and the county, whoever it is, say, well, look, this is terrible for the community. It's also going to be bad for any type of redevelopment and future opportunity. And how do we work together to really bring that to top level and start, figuring it out.
Right.
Let's handle. Let's try to figure out things that are wreaking havoc today. I think, like you said,
Yeah.
in the community, and work. And I think that's somewhere where we can come in. Sometimes a third party coming into the local government's not the worst thing, and say to advocate for certain change that can benefit the community. But getting back to that's part of the value too, in the safety, like you said, for the older folks, just to be able, you said, are having trouble safely walking down the street.
Quality
Well, that's
of
something
life.
we
Yeah.
need to address, and I think that as we came in, we would want to help do what we could to advocate for addressing that right
Yeah.
away as well, and help even give a larger voice to it.
You mentioned of a possibility, if that's in the cards, of having City Hall move to somewhere within this district.
Yeah.
And I think that would put City Hall and an innovation downtown district on Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard. And there has been a lot of discussion when these conversations started. Well, at least when I was put into them was maybe about 2015, 2017 when I started hearing about it. And even then and now, there is still this question or this concern is, if all of this development comes and if City Hall comes over here, are we going to lose Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard?
No, that's a big piece of
that's a huge question.
And no, because that really in our conceptual drawings is the main area.
Draw,
It's the main it's the main place for the retail and everybody to walk and have the things to do in the storytelling of the history. So not at all. In fact, and he recently passed away, but my neighbor, formerly catty-cornered across the street in Atlanta, was Dexter King.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
so I used to see him and his wife, a decent amount. Although, truth be told, they lived most of the year in California. But regardless, so no, we've never, to us, Martin Luther King is part of really the main kind of draw through.
And it's the storytelling.
Oh, totally.
It ties into the story of, the Northwest District. Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, you find that wherever you go, you're going to run into the Black community. That's where it's taking it. But also, too, when you think about, when I think about Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevards and places, they don't look pleasant. In
a lot of areas.
In a lot of areas. So, with this project being down here, I think it is 100% needed to make sure that this street stays Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard. Like it has to stay that way. Something the commissioner said, and I agree with her. Commissioner Perkins, she said, it's called, at first it was called the Innovative District, and then it changed to the new downtown. And she said, the names change, but, who comes up with the name? Why don't we have a say in that? And I think to that point, I think it is true, because it matters what you call something where people live,
Especially if you're going to change the name.
Especially if you're going to change it, right? So I think, that could definitely be something that we get participation in. When we talk about this project and like how people can participate, so much about projects are, what can you put in? What do you bring to it? What do you add? Like, what do you bring to the table? Okay, if you want to say the name needs to change, and everybody needs to vote on it, how do we do that? Creating those little, not even little, I hate that word right about now, but creating spaces where people can come and network and talk about these things. Interest-based. Like, we got to stay on topic here. We just here to talk about, what we're going to name the downtown. Let's throw some ideas out there. Let's figure that out. But creating opportunity for people to engage along the way of 10 years of building this, I think, that will of economic opportunity. And I'm not sure if you all have come up with, at this point, a platform in which you are going to bring these ideas, all the different people that want to do something. How do you bring all that together? Because might be 117 people that want to go right here. How do you choose who goes there and who participate, and do it in a way that it's not a zero-sum game? That, okay, you may not get this, but then what else opportunity is it for you to still participate?
Yeah.
So,
And I think there's a lot of talking about, and I've had other discussions regarding this is, what reasonably can we expect and, do, and meaning me and you and community and developer, city, CRA, what really can be done, and, for all of us to be reasonable about what our roles are and expectations, and be reasonable how we deal with each other, and on, on the give and take on how it happens and how decisions are made and so on. So I think it's a lot of, you're really working together. But I do, kind of getting back to where I started, I think it's a area, new downtown, that either works for everybody or works for no one. So it's incumbent upon us to work together, because it's not like we're going into an area where nobody lives and we can build whatever. That's just not the case. And in most situations that we're in are like that, or in the community that we're in, with whatever the circumstances are. And this one will involve, us working, I think really closely together for the betterment of the area and the community. But our opportunities are, extraordinary here compared to just going off and building something in West Boca or somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Right? Or you make it, and I've said this to some of the county folks too. We have opportunity, and it's incumbent upon us. I formerly held office, in St. Johns County.
St. Johns County.
If I'm a county commissioner or a city commissioner, it's incumbent upon me to do the best that I can for the people living there. And so I still look at myself a little bit like that in government, because I've had that role before. I certainly understand what role the administrators and council people and commissioners should be looking at.
Yeah.
And I've been not quiet about that, because I think the project requires, real dialogue and working together, to have success.
I agree. Well, I want to thank you for starting the dialogue here on Martin Luther King Boulevard. That's exactly where we are right now. And I want to also ask that we continue, to do part 2, 3, 4, bring more people to the table, so that, we are building this downtown together. I also want to say to the audience, y'all make sure y'all subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you share. Look at that. I am performing this Saturday. Welcome to Hollywood. It's the end of the Poetry Month celebration. Y'all know it's National Poetry Month. I'm the best poet in the business, if y'all didn't know. Now you know. I'll be performing this Saturday at Lux Lounge. Welcome to Hollywood for Mellow Fest. Shout out to Will Serious. Shout out to Fat Swaggy Bastard and my boy Salam the Poet. Also, to this evening, I am headed over to Moreland Academy, where we are doing a Teen Entrepreneur Expo. Listen, we've been working with these kids for about 12 weeks now, getting them prepared for an expo. They are going to be competing for first, second, and third place. Of first place $2,000, second place $1,000, and third place $500. And all this money is going to go towards them setting up their businesses. Y'all come out and support these kids. This is our first cohort. We're working with Moreland Academy, which is a private school that does so much for this community. And I want to make sure you all know you can come and support them, volunteer, be a mentor, whatever. Shout out to our sponsors, Broward County, YWCA, Coastal, and we just got the Miami Dolphins to come through and help. So, thank you. Shout out to my partner, who is the program manager. I'm the program coordinator, Latoya Almenard. I appreciate you all for coming through. Steph, thank you for stepping up. This was a quick one, and you made it work. I appreciate you, Thanks, DJ, for coming through. You got anything you want to say? Okay. I appreciate you coming through, DJ Pastor Rich.
Thank you
for coming through and taking the call anytime I call.
Absolutely.
We're going to do this again, people.
Let's
Listen,
keep doing
y'all stay tuned. Listen, don't say you want to be a part of it if you not tuning in. The table is here. It's set. It's being set. Pull up a chair. Pull up a chair. Everybody's welcome. The new Downtown Bottom Up Podcast. We out. The metaverse. So much going on. But let me tell you about it. I worry about your spirit when you take pictures with money. I mean, they're dead presidents whose cabinets never have any canned goods. That would mean it's all good in the hood, and we all know it's really not. But the block is hot, and the pot just got legal, proving that the grass is greener on the other side. Ride for the homies when money is the motive, but the funds getting lower and the trees getting higher, more potent with fire. You hire liars to tell you the truth, but listen to your lawyer.